Hello everyone, thanks for joining us for this session on objectively assessing functional movement via telehealth. Really good to have everyone here. If you don't know already, if you log into YouTube, you'll be able to use the comment section and we'll be having a look. So if you have any questions during the broadcast of this session, just put the questions in the comments. We'll be watching over them and be able to ask them of the guests that we have on tonight. So the two guests that I have joining me this evening, or my evening, it might not be for you, is Stephen King, who's a physio and an osteopath, and also Andrew Lemon, who's an osteopath, and they're from Movement Assessment Technologies. But not just from there, they also run the Injury Rehab Centre and another technology company called Strength by Numbers. So I'm going to bring them in and I'll get them just to give you a little bit of their backgrounds so they can introduce themselves. Hi guys, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having us, Joel.
So perhaps, Stephen, if I can start with you, just let people know a little bit your background.
Sure, yeah. So look, I first actually qualified as a personal trainer through my studies in osteopathy. Did my 5 years masters in that, like your lovely wife, and then I went and did my masters in physiotherapy as well, just because my HECS debt wasn't big enough. But for me, it was just about trying to bridge the gap about some of the things that I was doing from a movement point of view, from personal training, and some of the hands-on table-based treatment I was doing with osteo. And for me, that I thought that physio would help me bridge the gap, and it did to an extent. But then I was lucky enough to catch up with my osteopathy colleague Andrew Lemon here. We were talking about this sort of functional movements and talking a lot about objective assessments. And since there we've come a long way over the last 5 or 6 years.
Great. And what about yourself, Andrew?
Yeah, similar story to Stephen. My background was a lot in sports coaching. So I was a rowing coach and football coach. Got into osteopathy because I wanted to be a problem solver with the human body. I had an interest in how it kind of all worked and the reasons why some people got injured and some people didn't. And, similar to Stephen, I think, kind of finished that course, but felt like there was more that I needed to go out and pursue, and, went out and did some other study over in the United States and did some other courses as well. And then kind of came back, and fortunately for me, Stephen was having similar thoughts, and it's one of those problems when you get two minds full of ideas bashing together. Obviously, a couple of interesting things arise from that, which developed into some of the businesses that you just described.
Sure. So, is it fair to say that all of your businesses
just lost you there? Sorry, Joel. I might
You're right.
jump out and jump back in.
We did have a situation where we found that sometimes my audio will cut out for them. They're just going to refresh, and they'll be back in a second, so I can ask them the next question. Okay, fantastic. So the three businesses that I mentioned of yours at the start, so I assume that they heavily all sort of revolve around this assessing of functional movement and trying to do so objectively. That's been the focus across all three of the businesses?
Probably wasn't that easy to use. It took a long time to set up, and when you're with people, it added a lot of extra time to the consults, and it probably didn't give us simple actionable data that we needed to actually get people where they wanted to go. And that's where we started working with a few colleagues that I grew up with to create Strength by Numbers and the AXIT system. So a system to be able to basically put numbers to all forms of strength and power capacity in regards to any functional movement or any muscle strength.
Cool. Now, a big focus, what we want to talk about tonight, is doing this via telehealth. So I assume that that's become much heavier a part of what you're doing in the recent weeks or months now. But have you been doing, I guess, via the telehealth or remotely previously? Was that something that you've done before, or has it just come about now due to COVID-19?
Yeah, look, it's been an interesting thing, obviously. I think everyone's in a similar boat. Fortunately for us, we had a little bit of experience already in delivering telehealth. As educators, we've been fortunate enough to travel around the world teaching some of our methods and some of our ideas. But what that's meant is, of course, we've had to leave the clinic, and our patients and our clients have still needed our assistance and our expertise and our care, which has meant obviously being able to catch up with them, utilising those telehealth services. And fortunately for us, I guess the systems and the models that we use to be able to perform our assessment really allow us to continue to deliver that care, because it's all about working with numbers and coming up with, I guess, a needs analysis for the people that we work with, and then developing programs and strategies to fulfill those needs.
Sure. So if we dive specifically into the telehealth stuff and probably the things you've been doing more recently with this, what types of services can you offer over telehealth at the moment?
Yeah, so obviously you can, take someone right from that point to that initial consultation, right through to high levels of performance. Like we've got sort of elite athletes that we work with. We're still working on making sure that they're prepared to go when their seasons start to sort of come back. But, we offer obviously the traditional sort of consultations, like the initial and the, return consultation, but we also offer more specialised sessions, like our sort of 1 hour super session. So it's something we traditionally done in-house, but through a lot of the objective assessments, some of which we'll share tonight, you can obviously do that remotely, either for them while they're at home, with some of the equipment that they've got, or a lot of the tests don't actually require a lot of equipment to perform as well, which is the beauty of it.
Okay. Is there services you were offering before that you're not able to do now without doing in-person consultations?
Well, look, I mean, we're geeks when it comes to having all the technology and the toys that are available to be able to do some of the consultations. As Stephen said, very heavily focused on the assessment. So we use a lot of high-end technology, things like the mat and the Axit system to be able to deliver that. So unfortunately, we can't necessarily bring an Axit system or a mat into everyone's homes who we are conducting the telehealth services. But as Stephen said, there are so many things that we can still do that don't require a lot of equipment, or if it does, things that most people would have around their home. So it does allow us still to be able to fulfill a lot of those assessment needs.
Sure. So prior to COVID-19, in let's say your the injury rehab clinic, what sort of percentage, if any, were you doing of telehealth before the last few weeks? Pre-COVID-19.
Look, we personally don't spend heaps of time in the clinic. For me, I'm probably only in the clinic 5% of my week. So, and it was a period there where I was out for 18 months. And through that period, I'd be seeing, 4 or 5 people a week via telehealth. I think the most remote place I did it was on a plane between Hong Kong and Taiwan in the middle of a monsoon. So that was pretty interesting consulting from there. And the internet was still better than here, probably at the injury rehab centre as well. So for us, it was probably a small percentage, I'd say, 5%, if that, from a face-to-face point in the clinic.
Okay, good. And what about now, in the clinic, whether it's yourselves or the other team members there, what sort of percentage are we telehealth now?
Yeah, it's certainly ramped up a bit. I mean, for us now personally, all the consultations that we're performing as a clinic at the moment are only telehealth based. We're no longer performing face-to-face consultations currently. So it has gone up a fair bit. But, as we said, the fortunate thing has been we've got such a system and a process that it just hasn't changed whether or not we're doing it in person or via a telehealth process. So the systems and the processes are exactly the same, and realistically the outcomes that we're able to deliver haven't changed at all as well. So We've been quite fortunate in that respect, and it's been quite an easy transition to be able to do so.
And something you touched on earlier, but I just want to clarify and be sure.
Sorry, I've lost you again there, Joel.
I'll wait for that. This one's a fantastic question, so we've got to wait till they're back and can hear it. While that's happening, just a reminder that if you're in the comments there, do feel free to put any questions you have so I can ask them of our guests as well. Thanks. It feels like... so what I was going to ask, and just to be really clear, although you alluded to it earlier, is you've been doing telehealth consultations for both new and existing patients, because I know a lot of people have been feeling comfortable to do it for an existing patient that they've already had their hands on them, but you're also finding the initial consultation you're able to do as well.
That we provide it's in the strategies that we can provide the people that we work with. It's got nothing to do with whether or not we're face to face with someone or if we're in person. And so that hasn't changed regardless of whether or not it's, in the clinic or if it's in a telehealth service. And I think for all the viewers out there, I think that would be one of the main things that we'd want them to take away is really back yourself in that respect. The value is in the strategies that you have and the knowledge that you have that you can provide the people that you work with.
Okay. Thinking about the sessions that you do, and let's say, I guess people can gather from the initial consultation what you just talked about then, but if we're just to talk through the structure of a normal session, so maybe this is an existing patient you're working on some rehabilitation for an injury they have, before we get into the specifics of the actual assessments, but what does that session look like? What's the structure of the session like?
Very similar to a usual consultation in many respects. I mean, we like to obviously preempt or lead up our consultations with a lot of information and education around what's going to happen. So we have a bunch of email chains that go out to the clients. Those are usually served with a bunch of videos as well that kind of outline, I guess, the process that the patient, whether or not they're a new patient or a return patient, having a telehealth consultation for this first time, what they can expect. And then we like to always follow it up with our secret weapon when it comes to building rapport, and that's using an application called Bonjoro to send a little video message to that client just to kind of welcome them, obviously, to the process, help them get to know us a little bit. But that process is very similar to how we would usually do things. And then, of course, then it's just like any other consultation. We need to ask a really detailed history, get to know kind of the individual's complaint, what's going on. We learn so much through the history taking process most of the time anyway. And then we can start to back that up with a good, thorough assessment, and particularly an assessment that sets baselines with objective data. And there's some of the things that we're looking forward to showing off, I guess, this afternoon, this evening, or wherever it is that people are watching from, whatever time zone it is. But then, of course, the only difference is then there's just not a hands-on component to that. But there's still the strategies and, I guess, probably mostly exercise prescription, things that in terms of giving advice as to what people should do to address, I guess, the needs that we've identified that this person has to start addressing, to start taking control of their condition. That's still the same. And we use a lot of technology as well to be able to start to deliver those exercises too. So we love to use PhysioTrack, another great application that integrates with your Cliniko system there, Joel, thankfully. Yep. We love using that as well. And that kind of helps, I guess, deliver some of those exercise-based programs so that we can achieve great outcomes.
And look, it might be something I think we take for granted, Andrew, but I think the success from telehealth really does come up with setting up your patient before they come in, and some of that education that you can provide through the SMS and email sequences that go out, sending them a little YouTube clip, a little bit about your clinic, about each of the team, but also about, especially now, the telehealth process and how it's going to work, because a lot of people in a lot of clinics have probably got away without having to do that, because most people know what a traditional, osteopathy or physiotherapy, exercise physiology consult looks like. It's really important to set up that framework for someone and to set the expectations for what they're going to achieve, because realistically, it's not the same session, even though we're saying you can provide a lot of value there, but it's important to know, that their expectations are going to get met as well. And as you said, I think, the more personal you can make it, especially because you can't meet someone in face-to-face, something like Bonjoro, where you can send a really personalised message, does help to build that rapport and make that initial consultation a lot easier.
Sure. So just seeing some of the comments, when you refreshed after coming back, it looks like there was a bit of a delay before people got your audio.
Joel, you dropped out again.
No worries. So they're going to refresh. I know there was a bit of a delay, so I'm going to summarize quickly while they come back, and then I'll make sure to give some time that you can see them again. So I'm just summarizing what was said before. So I'd asked them about new or existing patients, can they do both of those via telehealth? Was the question I was asking, because I know that a lot of people were saying that they're comfortable with a treatment where they've been hands-on the person already, and perhaps for a new consultation they're a bit scared of it, and they were just describing out of that initial consultation has worked well for them via telehealth, and particularly as the initial consultation is largely about taking the history, which has got no difference whether you're doing it via the video chat or in person. So guys, I was just summarizing for people that had missed out on that little bit before. Coming back to the structure of the one that you just talked about then, so some good tips that came out of there. Some people are clarifying the app. So the app you mentioned was PhysioTrack, the one for exercise rehabilitation. Yep. That's one that if people want to find it on the Cliniko website, if you go to connected apps, you'll be able to find PhysioTrack listed there, and you can get details of it. The other tip you're saying, or I guess, indicating towards, is that maybe you do have to go to a little bit of extra effort to build the rapport, build the friendliness and the connection that, maybe comes easily when you're in person, and over a telehealth or video chat, you might want to take some extra steps to make sure you still get the same result like that.
Certainly, definitely.
Cool. Now we ended up getting a little bit of talk about the initial consultation there, but I'm really still, like, maybe even for my own personal benefit, I'm wondering if I go and see you and I've got this injury and we do a session over telehealth. So what I'm kind of wondering is, I assume at the start of the session you might do something like, getting a recent history of me, what's going on lately, you need to find out any changes, how I'm doing. Do you then, perform some of these objective assessments that we're going to go through, then prescribe some exercises and, maybe develop a plan for future? Or is that a fair overview, or how would you say that structure sits?
Yeah, look, we'll perform the assessments. We'll often get them, like we would in an in-house environment, so get them to perform some of the exercises, maybe some of the stretches or some of the foam rolling or some of the strengthening exercises. See how that maybe modifies their symptoms if they're suffering with some pain or discomfort, or see how it affects those objective results to see if it's actually going to be worthwhile then continuing on to do those exercises for the next day, 2 days, week, until I catch up with that person again. And then we'll obviously go through full program before we finish up the call, summarize it, set the goals and what we really want to achieve at the next session. So compared to face-to-face, I think even with telehealth, it's even more important to make sure that your goals are set really clearly with that patient and they're aligned. And you've got some really clear strategy about what you're going to achieve in the next session and what the importance of, them attending that session is, because they're maybe not perceiving the same level of value that they would traditionally from a face-to-face consult just because it's new. So it's really important to make sure they know exactly what you're going to do and why it's important that they keep that appointment and don't cancel it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What about the timing of the appointments? Do you find that a telehealth appointment runs for the same duration as an in-person?
Yeah, we've probably extended ours a little bit more just so that we can just continue to work with people who are working with some things that are probably a bit new as well. But, as Stephen said before, I think what you can do is certainly think about how you can divide your sessions up, maybe into specific goals for each session, utilising the telehealth system. I mean, most people are kind of logging in from home. They've probably got a lot more time available to be able to maybe kind of break those sessions up, where maybe usually in a normal consultation type process, it might be difficult for someone to get into the clinic usually. So some of those barriers might be removed now. So you can kind of divide it up into maybe some shorter sessions, but we've typically maybe spent a little bit more time with our telehealth sessions.
And I think we've got a good example of why that is tonight as well. Technological issues. Yep. Not everyone has great NBN or internet access, even though we're quite good here today, 2 weeks after getting the NBN installed. But not a lot of people have that, especially the older patients. They tend to not be as tech savvy. And, sometimes you do have to just pick up the phone and help them actually get onto the Cliniko platform, even though it's really simple and straightforward for them to use. Sometimes you still do need to give them that little bit of assistance, and even just the normal workflow that you may be doing with your assessment. Like, you don't have everything set up in the same way, so maybe you've got to get them to go and get the right size chair. Even though we try and set them up before they come in, we give them an email with. It would be ideal if you have a chair ready, if you've got like a tape measure or a ruler ready, and maybe if you've got some little weights or a backpack that weighs a little bit, ready for the consultation as well. So again, setting up does help you speed that up, but often people, they'll forget. It's a pretty crazy time. Everyone's got lots of different things going on.
You ran software updates as well on that first session that usually kind of pop in as well.
So that does lead me to the next thing I was interested about, which is what preparation is required, before the session. Do you send them a checklist and say it'd be great if you have a tape measure, some weights, some complicated equipment, and do you have to have any equipment on your side?
Yeah, spot on. I mean, that's the list that Stephen mentioned in that pre-appointment email and communication series, just making it really, really clear what that client has to expect and what the goals will be from the session, just so everyone knows exactly kind of what needs to be done, means that the session runs as smoothly as possible.
Sure. And what about pricing? Do you charge the same for when they return? We will find out whether they charge the same for telehealth consults or whether it's different pricing compared to the in-person. I'll just wait for them to get back and join us. So hopefully people will be able to hear you already. So I was just going to ask, with the telehealth consults, do you charge the same amount for them, or do you have different pricing telehealth versus in-clinic?
Yeah, so we've been charging the same price as our in-clinic sessions. We are spending a bit longer, as Andrew said, though. So traditionally our appointments would be sort of 30 minutes or so. We're spending 45 to 60 minutes with some of those consultations at the same rate. So I guess it is a discounted hourly rate,
sure.
But each consultation is, roughly the same price.
Okay. So with all of that said about it, I'm really keen to see some of these objective ways that you assess functional movement. Are you able to give us some demonstrations, some things that you might be looking for and ways you go about it?
Yeah, I think probably the best thing that we could do though, Joel, would be maybe set up, I guess, the principles and the strategies behind the process, because I think that's probably the thing that makes it easy to understand. So we'll show a bit of an image here, which is basically, I guess, our...
Oh, just 1 second, guys. I think that people are not getting your audio while they have your slide up. So we might need you to switch back, unless you can see in the settings for our chat, there might be separate audio and screen sharing or something, but otherwise I'll need you to switch back to video, unfortunately. I don't believe so. I don't think it is. Can you just try switch back to video for a sec? Let me see if I can tell. It's hard for me to tell whether it was working or not on the slide. People just let me know soon if you could hear them near the end of the slide, and if so, we can go back to it, but maybe stay with me for the moment if you can to discuss it. Oh, 1 second. I think people are now saying no audio on the video either. Let me just check if they can hear me or they hear... No, I think they can hear me. I can see the meter bar going up. Yep, they can hear me only. Perhaps, sorry guys, do you want to try refresh your thing again and see if that fixes the sound? Sorry. That's what happens when we try to get fancy and show you some slides and make it big on the screen. What I will make sure is any of the content that's been discussed at the moment that's not coming through, we'll make sure we get material for you afterwards. We'll send out an email after this event with extra information that's been discussed and maybe not come through to you through this session. So we'll make sure you still get that content. Hopefully people can hear you now. Maybe if you guys can just catch me for a second.
You might need a few editing.
I think so. Okay, I can tell. Now I know how to tell if they can hear you. They can definitely hear you now, which is good.
Fantastic. Basically, I mean, just sum it up. Basically, what we're saying is there's a system and a process behind how we need to do our assessment, and it's based on performing a needs analysis of the person that's in front of us. And we use the principles of functional performance testing to be able to cover off all the different capacities that people need to move, and that counts for whether or not they're suffering from pain and dysfunction or whether or not they're a high-performing athlete. And so utilising a checkbox criteria, we can really make sure that we cover off each of those in a systematic way that makes sure that we're doing so with great safety as well, because we don't want to test someone in a way that's maybe high impact or might actually predispose them to a risk of injury, particularly if we're not there in the room with them as well. But going through that process, we cover all the bases and we make sure we know as much as we can about the person that's in front of us.
Sure, makes a lot of sense. So is it a good point, do you think, to show people some of the things?
I think so.
Because I know some of the questions that were coming through is like, even with, the size of the webcam or what equipment people have available to them, things like that. So I'm sure they're keen to see an actual, objective assessment.
Yeah, look, I think the webcam, is a pretty important thing. I think it does take some skill to, train to, or some good education around getting your patients and clients to use their camera or their webcam in the right way. Positioning is the key. And so, what we've tried to do here is sort of set it back, 1 or 2 meters from where you're going to perform the test. So that hopefully you can get a good view of the whole body as they perform it. But particularly, you want the device around the body part, I guess, that you're looking at, or at the height of the body part that you're looking at. It's going to allow you to be a lot more accurate with that. So, as I said, we want to assess lots of different things. So we're going to look at flexibility. We're going to look at strength. We're going to look at balance and proprioception. We're going to have a look at power. So, someone's ability to tolerate high impact forces. And then we're going to look at something a bit more specific to, what they need to do maybe on the sporting field. So going through that sort of process, which we'll have in the flow chart in the ebook there, hopefully people can go through a way to keep people safe through this testing process as well, but also use the research that we've got in the book and the cutoff lines from the data to know if we need to do something with that person or not. So we're going to go through an example here of maybe taking someone through, maybe got some knee pain, and sort of work out a way how we can go through and systematically look at all those different things to make sure that individuals, getting where they need to go.
Sure.
So I'm just
while you do that,
turn this across. Let me know about the audio if you have any issues, but hopefully that should work fine
still
there.
Good, and because the technology is working so well, I'm going to
get into assessment and setting up the consultation. The outcome measure as well. So we can do that either through the forms, the new forms in Cliniko, or you can also do that really easily through PhysioTrack, which integrates into Cliniko really nicely there as well. And then first thing we're going to do if we're looking at someone's knee, we're going to have a look at flexibility, not only of the knee, but also of the joints around the knee. In this case, we're going to get Andrew to go through a weight-bearing lunge test. So you can see in this case, we've just got their tape measure at home. So everyone's got a tape measure either in their sewing kit, they've got one in their toolbox, or they're stealing their kids' ruler from when they're doing the homeschooling during the day. You sort of say you know a bit about that at the minute, Joel.
Yep.
So basically what you can get someone to do is, start with their toes on the wall and just push their knee to the wall and just slowly move their foot back. And what we're looking at here is we're looking at the amount of ankle range of motion, which we know from the research, looking at that, if we've got greater than 2 centimetres different side to side, we're 2 times more likely to have a lower limb pain or lower limb injury there. So that's that sort of meaningful point where maybe we need to get them to go away and do something. So, we may get them, if they have got it at home, like to do some foam rolling. We may get them to do some self-massage. Maybe we use something like this as an exercise or stretch for someone to start to improve that. But it's a really quick, simple way that we can get some objective data on their flexibility, both around the ankle, but also that has influence up through the rest of the kinetic chain like the knee.
So I've got 14 on the left and a 16 on the right. So
that's not bad for you, Andrew.
Yeah.
So what is that? Sorry, Stephen. What is that?
Sorry, Joel,
14?
just lost you again.
While they're refreshing that, I'm just going to find out a little bit more on that number. I see some questions. So one of them was about an ebook. So they've put together an ebook that will have links that we'll be able to email out to you. And also for this YouTube clip that's available later, we'll put the links underneath the YouTube clip. But we'll get that information out to everyone so you can get it afterwards. What was the other question? And someone else mentioned that when it went to the big screen, that audio cut out. So I won't do that anymore. Thank you for the tip. Stephen, so just the 14 and the 16 he mentioned, what exactly was that? So obviously Andrew knows what he's doing over there, but what was he? How did he know to give you the 14 and 16? What was he doing back there that was those numbers? Sure. Sure. So is it a case that he touches his knee to the wall and then he moves back a little bit, and if he can still do it, and then he keeps going till he can no longer do it, and that's how you work out the number? Yep. Sure. Well, it looks like your sound is cut out again. Give me a second. Let me see if I can work out what's causing it. So can you just talk again for me?
Yep. So
Yep, your sound's back. Yep.
Right. Did anyone else have any other questions about that test?
No, I think that was no more questions came through about that.
So it's a pretty straightforward test that a lot of people would be using in their practice already. If you're not, you definitely should start incorporating with your face-to-face clients as well. So that's if we were to look at the different aspects of the areas that we want to test, that would be looking at that flexibility component. Maybe we want to have a look at the balance component though to see the influence of their function. So we can use something like what we call the STAR Excursion balance test. And again, this is a really common test where basically someone stands on one leg. They reach out and touch the skirting board, so they've got to touch really low to the wall. So your cue to them is to stand a little bit away from the wall and reach out with the opposite foot to the leg you're standing on and touch right against the ground or sort of about a centimetre off the ground. If they can touch the wall there, you get them, like we did the last test, to slowly work their way back a little bit further until they can no longer touch the wall. Okay. We're obviously asking them through this session with all the tests as well if they're getting any pain or discomfort with each manoeuvre. And if that's the case, we want to find that point where pain comes on. I'm going to write that down in my notes. And I'm also going to try and ask them out of 10, what level of pain that is, because that's something we can then go back and reassess after we get them to go and do some stretching or some foam rolling or self-massage, or the next time that we see them in a day or a week's time.
Yep. Makes sense.
So we work our way back there and then compare to the other side. We can also do that. That test traditionally happens in 8 different directions as well. And so it's just as simple to go the other directions by slowly getting them to work their way around the clock or around the compass, basically. So they go from facing north. So then we're going to face northeast. And then they reach over the leg in front towards the wall until they get to where Andrew would be, which is southeast. And then obviously south and work their way around. So again, really quick, simple test, and you can get a direct comparison side to side, which not only tells you, okay, maybe there's a bit of an issue here, but also allows them to find a bit of a wow factor to get the buy-in to what you're doing too. Because again, with the face-to-face session, people potentially aren't valuing, with the telehealth session, people probably aren't valuing that as much as the face-to-face. But if you can show them, look, okay, there's a 6 centimetre difference there, and we know from the research you're 2.5 times more likely to get injured, all of a sudden that's, then you give them some exercises, and then you're going to reassess that next time. It gives them a reason to come back to that next consultation as well.
Sure. So a couple of things with this.
Sorry, Joel.
Obviously, so everyone that's watching, about the technical difficulties here, we will press through and do our best with them. I'll try to keep an eye to make sure that you can hear them and see them while we're going through things. And then let me just bring them back up. It looks like they're back now. And we'll do our best to get all the material to you afterwards as well. I was just going to ask a question. So obviously Andrew's quite far from the camera at the moment.
Yep.
And I chat to a lot of people on their webcams where they've got a wall right behind them. So do you find like having them on a laptop, having them on a phone, or what sort of thing gives you the best option, to be able to see them in a call?
Yeah, and I think it can work really well with both. It's all about just the placement. And that's where the chair that you've got to do some of the tests, like maybe the next test we'll get into, which is the single leg with the stand. The chair can be a really good place to position the device. So you can get it nice and close, or you can also move it back too. So that's another reason why we like to have the chair and send that out in the checklist, because we know no matter where they are, we're going to have something that's going to be able to provide a nice view to position the camera as we've done here.
Sure. And I had a question come through, not that I understand this question, but how might you make the SEBT safe?
So I guess maybe they're saying maybe you've got an older patient whose balance isn't very good potentially at home. Remember, safety is always the number one thing with any form of assessment. So again, really great reason to have a chair close by, so you can give them something that they can either hold on to, or you can have it there in case they're going to potentially lose their balance. If you are concerned, though, again, you've got to make sure that you go through the process, that they've got good flexibility, they've got good strength probably before you get to this balance test as well. So we go through that systematic process that we talked about before and put up on the slide that's in the ebook for people to make sure that's the case. If you have any doubt, though, don't do it.
Yep, makes sense. Okay, is there any others you wanted to show?
Yeah, so maybe we'll go through now. I'll just pop that other view back up for you. So maybe we'll have a look now at something like a single leg sit to stand. So we've already had a look at flexibility. We've had a look at balance. Now we're going to have a look through maybe a strength assessment. And again, something like a single leg sit to stand is a really great assessment. There's a lot of data and research on it. We know what someone should be able to do and maybe what they shouldn't be, or where they have some issues that they can't do that many. Particularly the amount of people we see at the minute. I've never seen so many people run past the clinic here as I have in the last 2 weeks. Everybody's out pounding the pavement, and we know each time you take a step, you're putting 2 to 3 times your body weight through your leg each step. So you've got to have a good amount of strength, and often that's something that runners tend not to do that well, is some of the strength training. And so the research...
That's enough from me. Yeah. I've had enough of doing that.
I was about to ask you how poor Andrew ended up the one demonstrating this.
You can do, Joel.
So is this a case, this particular test, is this a case of seeing how many you can do? Is that how this
Yeah, so
processed?
again, it's like any form of endurance-based strength testing, although for some people this might be a maximum strength test as well if they can only do one. So it's a really great test of strength or endurance. Find out how many they can do on one side, compare it to the other, and usually you want to be within about 10% on each side. If you've got someone who is maybe starting to get some knee pain because they have been out running a little bit, we know to run and to have good knee function, you should be able to do about 22 repetitions on each side. So again, that's something to know from the normal point of view, where we should be. And often you'll find, maybe they'll have some big discrepancy. Often people think, though, the weak side is the one where they often have pain. I think what you'll see a lot of the time is people can actually be, the stronger side is the one that often gets overloaded, especially in runners or long distance runners as well, because they're really utilising that side to drive them forward each step as well.
Yep. Okay, that makes sense.
Yep. Sorry, Joel, I've lost you again.
While he's just restarting, I'm feeling so bad for Andrew back there doing all these exercises. I feel like Stephen got the good job here.
Yep.
Okay, people should be able to hear you again.
Cool.
I did get a question of someone saying maybe that one looks difficult of those.
It's definitely difficult. And if they can't do a good amount of those, they definitely shouldn't be getting into some of the power-based tests, which are, again, for some of those higher functioning individuals, for instance, those people who have just decided that they haven't done anything for 10 years and they're going to all of a sudden take up running again, something like a hop test to assess power is, again, a really useful test. So again, you can use the tape measure that they've got at home on the floor there, just to have them perform a maximum single leg hop, basically hopping as far as they can on each leg. And what you do is you get...
Just 1 second, Stephen. Just while you're demonstrating this one, I'm actually interested if anyone wants to put in the comments. I can see a lot of people familiar with these exercises, obviously. I'm wondering if people that are watching have tried these via telehealth or have any questions specifically about doing them via telehealth as well. So go on.
Fantastic. Yeah, so basically with this test, you want to measure from the toes, sort of just behind the start line, and then you want to measure to the back of the heel, basically. So if you have them to hold something in their hand, to pop it down behind their heel, so again, they can step away and they can measure that distance of that hop there. And again, we know you want to be within about 10% of the other side. And there is lots of normative data out there, depending on the people that you work with, about maybe how far they should be able to hop for their particular chosen activity. Yeah. So often you'll see for those recreational runners, for males, about 150 centimetres is a good target. And for females, about sort of 120 to 125 is often a good target for them as well. But we've got some of that information in the free ebook that we'll give the link to after the call as well.
And how did Andrew do back there? What distance was that?
Amazingly well, Joel. Amazingly well.
Do as he says, not as he does, is probably the usual motto there. He's definitely improved recently, though. So that's a useful test for power. And then if you want to do something a little bit more sort of sports specific or look at an agility component, maybe you've got some of your soccer athletes or your football players or netballers, something like a side hop test. which is basically just having them set up a point 40 centimetres apart there and basically hopping side to side for 30 seconds. So again, you set the stopwatch on your phone while you're on the Cliniko Telehealth platform. And basically you're there setting the time, counting how many repetitions they can do on one side. Again, give them 45 seconds to recover and then assess the other side. And again, you want to be within around that 10% there, side to side. Again, there's some normative data in the ebook that you look at for what the cutoff should be for the individuals in particular sports and stuff.
Okay, great.
So again, as you can see, really visual tests, really easy to perform with not a lot of equipment, but give you a lot of meaningful advice to say, is this person where they need to be? Is there anything that they need to, or do you need to give them some exercises or strategies to actually improve these things to help get rid of their pain or discomfort? And so if someone has come in with a knee complaint, you might do that weight-bearing lunge test, that test that we did first. And you might say, okay, look, they've got 14 centimetres side to side. And we say, look, normal's around 10 to 12 centimetres. You should be less than 2 centimetres difference. Their flexibility is good. We get them to do the balance test standing on one leg, and they can reach 62 centimetres on one side, 60 on the other. That's less than 4 centimetres difference. Again, that's quite good. But then we get them doing the sit to stand test, and all of a sudden they can do 10 on one side and they can do 18 on the other. We start to say, okay, look, you haven't got maybe a flexibility issue. Maybe your balance isn't an issue, but we definitely need to work on the strength. And then with some other exercises that we run through, there's lots of different ways you can test all the muscles in the body. You can actually go and work out which is the muscle or muscles that you need to really work on and focus for your strengthening.
And I think particularly from a motivation standpoint, being able to set a score or a target or something like that for that client to aim for, because unfortunately, potentially a lot of clients aren't coming in and seeing us. Maybe they're lacking a little bit of the motivation that they would usually have, given all the, external circumstances that are going on at the moment. Yep. Setting them a target, really, people find that so motivating. It really keeps them engaged, particularly with the programs that you'll develop to help them.
Yep. Some questions that are coming through are around space for the person to perform these tests. One thing I would suggest is we're in like a really unique place technology-wise these days where every person has a camera in their pocket that's quite mobile. So I would say if they get creative with where they position their phone and you're using, a fantastic telehealth system that works on phones like Cliniko does, then you can just get them on their phone, get them to position up against a book or a stand or something and get them to get creative to put their phone in a good spot. But it's like the most mobile portable camera and everyone's got one.
Yeah. Everyone's got a selfie stick these days as well. That's often something you can utilise in these times as well. I've asked a few people, have you got a tripod or anything for your phone? No. Have you got a selfie stick? Oh yeah, I've got 3. I'll go and get one. Yeah. That's a good tip to remember as well.
Nice. Cool.
Might have lost you again there.
All right, we'll just bring them back when they return in a second.
Hey there, Joel.
Okay, you should be back and should be fine. I think we're getting the hang of troubleshooting this technical thing where I get to bring you back quickly now. So let me jump. Is that all the exercise you're going to demonstrate for now?
Yeah, I think that covers, as we talked about, there's that flow chart. It covers everyone from, some of the more basic and the least invasive type tests, the simplest tests, to the things that are, very highly dynamic, high impact, maybe a bit more sports specific. And I think if you just keep that flow chart and that kind of checklist approach, you'll just make sure that you cover all the bases with the people that you work with.
Yep. So another thing that I know has come up when I've talked telehealth with people before is, do you think that a new practitioner can do these sort of assessments over telehealth, or do you think there's an advantage that you've been seeing people in person for a while that you can then translate it to telehealth?
I think there's actually a benefit to being a new practitioner, that you haven't developed your old habits and ways, and you can really adapt to this stuff. It is, quite intuitive things, a process to go through, because it is just assessing all the different capacities that you potentially, most people in the health and fitness professions have had exposure to some form, physical activity and exercise, often training themselves in their gym. And these maneuvers are often, quite similar to some of the things that they've potentially done as well. So I often find, some of the younger practitioners, especially because they're more tech savvy as well, tend to do a lot better with the telehealth from what I've seen around the place recently.
I think particularly having a system and a process of doing it, it just simplifies it. It means that you don't have to spend a lot of, time thinking about what are you going to do next, because you have a system and a process that you follow, and it's about just going through that.
And that's the beauty of the setting up your templates in Cliniko is you can really set up your telehealth consult and go through, okay, we're going to do these strength tests with people. We're going to do these flexibility assessments, these balance assessments, and really just work your way down the page. And it really allows you, the better systems you have, to upskill those new team members really quick in this type of stuff as well.
Sure. So I assume, I know people always also will ask, like, what's the research behind these kind of things? But am I right to ask this? And I may not be, because I would say these topics are a little bit outside my area of expertise. But these seem like standard tests that people would already be doing in their clinics, standard tests with research behind them already. And even though the medium that you're delivering them over is telehealth, nothing's really changing here. So it's still the things that you would do in clinic, but just adapting them a little bit to deliver it via a different medium.
Yeah, look, I think that'd be totally right. I think most people, a lot of people are using this. Look, we've obviously taught over 5,000 people around the world now, so there is a need where people are still probably not utilising this type of assessment approach enough. They're probably using more especially the physios or osteochiropractors using the traditional orthopedic approach, which is the stuff you can't actually deliver, but it's also probably the stuff which isn't that meaningful to help someone actually go from where they are now to achieve their goals too. So I think, there's some people who are already doing this really well, but I think there's some other people who, it's a perfect time to upskill, and this is the beauty of you doing this today. Hopefully it's given some people some new ways to start to think about how they can deliver their services, not only via telehealth, but when the clinics reopen as well.
So these types of exercises and the stuff that you have available, like in your ebook, and I know you've got a course that I'll talk about in a minute, but a lot of the things you mentioned about people that are running now and athletes and things, what about like elderly patients? Is there exercises like this that are suitable for them, or people maybe that are less energetic than some of your high performance people you see?
Yeah, so I mean I guess that flow chart and I guess that graphic that we showed to do with functional performance testing, once again, that applies to your elderly neighbour who likes to do a bit of gardening on the weekend, and it also applies to an elite level basketballer. The point is that what we've got to do is just have assessments that are focused on how can I assess the needs of that individual and whether or not they have that capacity. So strength comes in many different forms, and it doesn't matter if you're maybe an elderly client that wants to be able to garden, you still need a level of strength to be able to perform that. Now, you might not be doing some of the hot tests that we demonstrated before, unless your elderly neighbour is still playing a bit of weekend basketball. That there's a few possibilities there. But the purpose is being able to assess the needs of that individual, and there's a whole host of different tests that apply to every different patient type that you might see. We've just given you a small example of some of the ones that we might do for the knee example tonight.
And I think a lot of people traditionally, don't use this type of assessments or associate these type of assessments with the older population. But they forget, they still need to walk up a flight of stairs. They put 1.2 to 1.3 times their body weight through their leg. So it is really important for them to have some form of strength and capacity there. And there are ways to progress or regress all the things we've done tonight and the other 50 plus tests we go through in our courses.
So some other questions that are coming through, and not that we'll go through the actual methods for them, but lower back complaints, upper limbs, upper body things. I assume that there's exercises and these objective assessments of movement for all body parts, right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, as you said, it's about having a system and a process that applies not only for the lower limb that we demonstrated today, but also for the trunk, for the spine, for the upper limb. And it's about just covering those different capacities. Once again, looking at flexibility, looking at strength, looking at power and balance and control. And they, apply in all different areas. And then once again, if we have a system and a process there where we can go through all of these different areas and assess, I guess, this individual's capacity for all of those different types of things that they might need to be able to do, then we can pick out where maybe some of the limitations and the deficiencies are. And that really helps to be able to look at the person as a whole as well, which, is quite an important thing. People are not just their condition that they present with, so that then we can maybe pick out maybe where, say, a limitation, say at the foot and the ankle, maybe that's actually relating to someone's shoulder or back complaint. But, unless you're assessing all of these different things, it can be very hard maybe to pick those out.
Sure. So I want to talk briefly about some course and material that you have available, and also just some of our upcoming plans. It looks like losing them again, but that's okay. Some of our upcoming plans for these live broadcasts as well. So the first plan will be to get our tech stuff fixed. Aside from that, so I always feel like it's at risk of sounding like an advertisement now when we talk about, the services you have, but it's really not about that. I guess I should have a disclaimer because we're doing a few of these sessions. Certainly us at Cliniko, we get no kickbacks and we're not like paid to do any of these kind of sessions. We're finding, experts on topics that we want to share with you. And, it so happens that these people often do, courses in education online, which is the case with Stephen and Andrew. So through Movement Assessment Technologies, you have a course that people can do. In fact, it's an upcoming course that's starting soon that people can do. And I assume it goes through the specifics of these exercises and a lot more exercises, also with details how to perform them in telehealth. Is that correct?
Yeah, correct. So we've included a new telehealth module in our brand new Mat Online course for this year. So we released it for the last 2 years, but this year includes some whole brand new course, as well as access to recordings of our live face-to-face courses as well. And look, people often ask us, should I do a live face-to-face course or the online? And for me, the online one provides a lot more value for people because you can access it for a period of time, for a couple of years afterwards. But you can sit there and you can digest it, but then you can still ask questions as we go through the live sessions and stuff as well. And, we go through, if you think about a weekend course, if we go through 30 tests, the likelihood of you remembering something over those 2 days is pretty low. But if we go through it each week through an online platform and introduce some of these things to you slowly and then get you to go away and adopt these things in your practice, either via telehealth or in person, you're going to get a lot more out of it. So for us, we've actually found it's a really great platform to operate on.
Okay, excellent. So you've got you're doing a discount for people that are watching this. You're doing 20% off that course. And I hope I'm not mistaken with what I described here. It'll sound bad if it is. But so you're offering some of the sessions from the previous year or the existing content that you have up there, as well as enrollment and access to the stuff that's coming out in about a month's time or a bit over. Yeah. Is that correct?
Yeah, so as Stephen said, it's a whole new bunch of new material as well. So we've been busy adding even more tests to what's already out there. So there's going to be over 50 tests available in that online course for everyone to be able to consume, whether or not you want to do it via telehealth or you can do it in the clinic with your clients as well. Also comes with a free mat, something we haven't even talked about tonight, Stephen, really, which is a tool that allows you to really, optimize how you perform a lot of these tests
and keep social distancing in it as well.
Exactly right. So very important there. And that's launching on June 1st.
Okay, so with the details of that, everyone that registered for this, we will send out an email afterwards that'll have a link where you can get an ebook that they're giving away. And also, if you want to sign up and have a look at the course and get that discount, you'll be able to do so via there. We'll send that out. We'll put details on the YouTube link and you'll have access to that. So if you want more exercises, to upskill on this kind of stuff, also you'll find contact details, no doubt, for Stephen and Andrew, or at least their business, in those links, and you'll be able to reach out and ask more if you want to. I just want to mention very quickly, while I still have people here, some upcoming broadcasts like this that we've been talking about doing, and if people in the comments can let me know what's of interest to you. So we're thinking about doing one on marketing, and specifically the sort of marketing that you can do for your business in this time, whether it's that your business is closed at the moment, whether you're telehealth only, or whether you're still operating somewhat as normal, with different procedures. We can provide some information on marketing for that. Another one that's available for people would be to talk about security. So I don't know if people saw in the news, Zoom's gone through a little bit of trouble lately with privacy and security requirements. And recently there's been 500,000 accounts of Zoom accounts that have been exposed and found, all their details leaked. And as much as I'm shocked to say it, this one was not Zoom's fault. And actually it's the security of the people using Zoom that exposed them to this. So we can give some practical tips on security for yourselves and also for your team that are working from home. And lastly, another one that came up is talking about chronic pain and how to help people with chronic pain through telehealth. So if any of those topics are of interest to you, please post in the comments and let me know so we can start to plan these future sessions. Sorry about that, guys. I just wanted to get it out there so people can give us a little bit of feedback on that. Is there anything else you want to share with people before we finish up? I don't think we've got any other questions outstanding.
One last time.
We got a final reset just to finish off with.
Hopefully that'll be the last one.
Yep.
Just want to thank you for having us on tonight. Also, yeah, thank you for getting the Telehealth platform up really quickly as well. It's made our processes a lot quicker and being able to streamline a lot of that onboarding information, setting people up for success. If people are after more information, we're also going to be doing another one of these next week, a little bit different, but on a similar topic, how Albert Einstein would do telehealth, so they can access that from our website. We've got some good outfits planned for that, Andrew, and hopefully we don't have too many sound issues there. But yeah, if they do want to download that ebook, you'll send the link out. You can head to matassessment.com/Cliniko. You can download that ebook, and you can also access that 20% offer for the next week as well.
Cool, that's fantastic. And thank you both so much for spending your evening to share this information with people. You know, everyone is sort of scavenging at the moment and looking at different ways they can adapt their business to survive and get through this period. So I appreciate the information you shared with everyone.
No worries at all.
Thanks, Joel.
Hope everyone's going all right out there.
Cool, thank you both. I'll hang around just a tiny bit more as I see some questions for me come through, but I'll let you guys go. Thanks so much.
Cool, thanks, Joel.
And I'll just check if there's anything that people are asking related stuff. So I see that chronic pain would be interesting to people, security also. Keep posting in the comments if you're keen on any of those other topics. If you have any other questions, keep sending them through. Even once we go offline with this, we can still answer questions in the comments or also get back to you via the follow-up email that you do. And there's some nice comments coming through for Stephen and Andrew here. I'll make sure that they receive them. I will pass them on. One last thing, if anyone wants to leave a comment, just as far as these broadcasts go, assuming we get the technical issues fixed, because I know they're a bit of a grievance tonight, but if anyone wants to let me know whether 1 or 2 of these per week would be ideal for them, or what sort of frequency you'd like to have these available to you while we're putting together, you know, some material to help you out in this period. So I'm keen to know, you know, is a weekly one of these good? Would you like a couple of these a week? Keeping in mind you can watch them later as well if you don't make it to the live session. Let us know. We'll still be around in the comments. And thanks everyone for joining. Goodbye.